So what we're going to talk about today is the January 2026 real estate market stats year over year, York region. We're going to have a look at what happened the year before, and we're also going to have a look at what happened in the most current month we have, which is December. So the sales numbers we have here are across all home types. So that's inclusive of detached homes, semi-detached, link homes, condo townhouses, absolutely everything. Now, what sales volume is actually telling us is how confident buyers actually are. It's not necessarily to reflect how loud the headlines are. More sales equals more participation, and less sales is hesitation. So if we look at the year over year, so December 2024 across all of York region, 665 total sales. November 2025, 893 sales. That declined in December of 2025 to 683 sales. Now that's actually kind of normal. It is normal for the holiday season and Christmas for volume to slow down because people, get about half a month. Because about the 15th of December, people start thinking about Christmas and, it's going to look like for them. And a lot of times listings can come off the market also. So average sale price across all home types. So the average sale price shows us basically direction of the market. We're not talking about affordability here. So December 2024 in York region, was the average sale price across all home types. In November of 2025, 1,208,000, so a decline year over year. And December 25, 1,204,000 is your average sale price across all home types. Now, this is also going to break down. Obviously, you can get down further depending on what home type we're talking about. If we're just on detached, or we're drilling down to condo, or we're drilling down to townhouse, and so these year over year numbers, again, this is an average across all home types, but we may see a difference. You could price increase or decrease accordingly, depending if you're looking at a specific home type. So depending on, this is going to change how your specific home type and town, because some towns don't necessarily follow the overall trend of York region. So the SNLR is also known as the sales to new listings ratio, or not also known, that's what it stands for. And what that is it tells us how much of the listings that are coming on the market that particular month are getting absorbed or selling, right? It's a measure of sales. So when we look at the SNLR for December 2024, 86% of the homes that came on the market that month sold. And in November 2025, we had 42% of the homes that came on the market sold. So there's that aren't selling, right? 69% of the homes that came on the market sold across York region. Now, again, that's going to vary town to town. Some towns are a little busier than others, some towns not. But how we determine whether it's a buyer or seller's market. So a buyer's market would be a percentage number that is under 50%. And a seller's market is a market where the SNLR over 60%. So again, depending on what town we're looking at, we could see some variation. But if you look at York region as a whole, 69% put us in a seller market. But again, we're looking at all home types here. So if we break that out into condos, or we break it out into townhouses, you might see a different number. And certainly feel free to reach out to me if that's something that you'd like to explore further. Now, the MOI, or months of inventory, it's a measurement of telling us that if no other listings came on the market, how long would it take at the current rate of consumption or current rate of buying? How long would it take to completely deplete the inventory? So if we look at months of inventory across York region, 4 months of inventory in December 2024, November 2025, 5.3 months of inventory, December 25, 4.89. Now, the thing you have to remember is a lot of times with the SNLR, or months of inventory, it can represent a false positive around. So looking at November 25 in months of inventory and December 25, you're going, oh, that's great. The months of inventory went down. So as a seller, you're going, wow, the market's heating up. Not necessarily, because you have to remember that during the month of December, it's often normal for people to take their home off the market because they don't want to show it during that holiday season, and they stop looking at houses too. And also buyers tend to slow down a little bit depending on personal motivation is. So it's always a great reflection in December, the month of December, what the market's actually doing. You have to actually look at January, February going forward to kind of the market's going to pan out to. So the SPLP is sale price to list price ratio. So this is a metric that tells us how close sellers are getting to their asking price. Anything over 100% obviously means that there's a lot of competition. Under 100% means that it's a little bit more negotiation power. So a year ago in December 24 in New York region, homes selling at 99% of asking price. November 2025, we're looking at 97%. December 25, 96% asking price. So again, for buyers, sellers right out there right now, the vast majority of homes predominantly are being negotiated regularly. Bidding wars are still happening. It depends on the house, but generally not naturally occurring because our inventory levels are a little higher. So when inventory levels are lower, that's when bidding wars tend to happen all the time on a single house you see. But right now we're having to cultivate that. And you see that through the underpricing of a house. As an example would be a house that's going to sell at $1 million, but it's priced at 850. And so it gets a bidding war and everybody goes, oh my God, bidding wars are still happening. No, that forced bidding war. That was a cultivated or manufactured bidding war. It wasn't naturally occurring like we would see in a market where there's a little bit more drought. So the days on market, the DOM counter basically tells us how quickly people are making decisions, how quickly buyers are making decisions. Obviously, shorter days on market means a little more urgency. Longer days on the market is a little resistance to what's going on. Now, you will notice I have two numbers here. So if we look at December 2024 days on market and then also 58 days on market, and what the 37 represents is, let me say by an example first. So oftentimes we'll see houses go through multiple listings, right? You might see the same house and from the street, you're driving by it every day thinking, oh my gosh, this house is still on the market, but it might have been delisted and relisted a couple of times. So during that process, so the real estate board tracks that as well. And so if you look at December 2024, 37 days on market was the average to get the home sold under the current listing that it was at. But the average of that home being on the market was 58 days, if that makes sense. So November 2025, we're seeing 35 days to get a home sold under that current listing. And then again, 58 days total on the market because it went through a few listing iterations. So again, we're seeing fairly consistent there. December 2025, 42 days on the market to get a home sold. And then we're looking at 65 days as a whole. Again, it's not abnormal for that time of year. December is not, I won't say it's a bad gauge in the market. It's certainly not the best gauge. And again, kind of in the market, we need to put to kind of look forward going to happen in January, February. And so, I mean, if you're a buyer or seller, you know, these stats reflect the market. If you're looking to sell in the spring, December is not a good gauge of that, is what I'm trying to say here. So what is in this? So what's in this market for buyers right now? For buyers, there's lots of inventory. I won't say that there's a lot of good deals out there, but good deals aren't made by looking on realtor.ca or whatever your preferred platform is. Deals are made by submitting offers. Deals are not made by sitting in your armchair. If you're actively looking at houses, and I'm not talking about if you're not serious and you're thinking about buying before the summer's over. I'm talking about if you're looking to buy now, then there's lots of inventory. And what I would invite you to do is think about looking back at some of the older listings that you may have bypassed because they were overpriced or the condition or whatever. And that's oftentimes why houses don't sell, because it's the perceived value of the buyer. But at the end of the day, we know this. We know that the buyer and or the market decides the price, not necessarily the seller. So the list price in this case, in this market, can be a bit of a fairy tale. That's the best, easiest way I can put it to make it understandable. So in order to find what that end number is and what the motivation may or may not be of that seller is, you have to put in an offer. And that's the only way you'll ever know. Now, from a standpoint of sellers right now, you do have an absorption rate of 69%. So depending on the market you're in, you're going to want to look at those stats and you're going to want to look at your specific home type. You're going to want to have an understanding of what the market is doing for that particular type of home. And of course, where it is. If you're in a smaller community like Stouffville or Newmarket or something like that, oftentimes we're still seeing a lot of big activity on houses and even bidding wars and things like that. So you definitely want to get an idea of where the market is for your particular home type, where you're located, and then derive a plan from there moving forward. But one thing I can say is through 2025 and as it seems into early 26, you definitely don't want to play around with price. You're way better off pricing it realistic to the market. And I know everybody always thinks about what was happening a couple of years ago and the prices were this and I've lost so much money. You're not really losing all that money because unless you bought there and you're trying to sell now. But the reality is we often buy and sell in the same market. So I hope you found this information helpful. Any questions at all about how it might drill down to your specific area or home type, feel free to connect.